Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Holistic Health Radio. I'm your host, Sarah Liz King. I'm an exercise physiologist and health coach, empowering you to find your healthy balance with food, fitness, and your body. Today on the podcast, I am going to be talking about my own personal journey on how I reversed my low bone mineral density. Now, I'm just going to put, I guess, a little disclaimer that this has been my own personal experience and should not be used as medical advice, but rather me talking through all of the things that I did to reverse my osteopenia back to very normal bone mineral density. If you are looking for support, definitely get one-on-one support. You can obviously come to us if you're looking for support on improving your relationship with food and exercise and recovering from hypothalamic amenorrhea or disordered eating, or seek advice from your own team of medical professionals. So, without further ado, let's dive in. A little bit of background on this story on how I actually developed osteopenia in the first place, and also what osteopenia is. So, I've got in front of me basically what is a bone mineral density scan and the results that come out from that. Now, this is my one from 2022 where I actually found out that I had normal bone mineral density for the first time. But I'll take you back to when I was about 20 or 21, which is when I found out I had osteopenia for the first time. Now, this was a few years into me struggling with disordered eating, being under my body's own ideal weight for it to function, and also having hypothalamic amenorrhea, aka my period was missing. And I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I'm quote unquote not that bad. But eventually it got to the point where I had to take some time off of studying because I just couldn't function, couldn't concentrate. And yes, my disordered eating was a lot worse than I was making it out to be to both myself and the people around me. When I went to my GP, he was like, well, we should probably get some blood tests and send you for an ECG and also get a bone mineral density scan. And when all of this happened, I was like, oh my gosh, like they're making such a big deal out of this. But actually, all of those tests showed how much my body was struggling to function. And the one that probably hit me the hardest was when I saw that I had low bone mineral density, because I knew, oh my gosh, this is something that, I may not be able to fully reverse, or at least that's what I had been told at the time. So I remember getting those results after going to the doctor and sitting in my car and just bawling my eyes out because I knew the damage that I was doing to my body, and yet I couldn't find my way out of my own circumstances to change my approach to eating, to change how I was exercising. I felt like I was a prisoner in what I was doing. And so my disordered eating went on for years, years longer than it definitely needed to. And my osteopenia got worse until I decided, probably at the age of 23, 24, to give recovery a red hot go. And that was when I decided to go and do an intensive outpatient program, which helped me kind of restore a lot of my weight, but my periods were still missing. And then finally, when I was 27 and figured out that hypothalamic amenorrhea was the cause of my missing periods and I recovered from them, that was kind of when I asked my doctor, I was like, does this mean that I can improve my bone mineral density at all? Or is basically what I have now going to be what I have for forever? Because as an exercise physiologist, you're kind of told that peak bone mass, you reach it at like the age of 25. And if you've done something to basically disrupt that process, then you can't have any change to that. That's your set bone mineral density for the rest of your life, which I have now learned through my own personal experience is not the case. And obviously through more research and kind of working with people that have low bone mineral density, I know that that is not the case. And you definitely can see improvements. For me to fully reverse mine was amazing, but it definitely took a long time. So these are the things that I did personally to help go from pretty much borderline osteoporosis to now having normal, healthy bone mineral density as a now 35-year-old person who was told at 25 that I would never be sitting here kind of having healthy bones like I do now. So the first thing I did was obviously I worked to get my period back. So estrogen is incredibly important in the process of bone formation and obviously bone resorption. So when bone gets broken down. So estrogen is really important in basically helping maintain a positive balance of bone formation and doesn't let bone resorption happen too quickly. Now, this is consequently why we see women who are postmenopausal, who have, naturally gone through that process of their menstrual cycle stopping, are at a higher risk of things like osteopenia and osteoporosis because they're not having that bone protective hormone estrogen floating around as much. Now, obviously, having an eating disorder and having hypothalamic amenorrhea were the main causes of why I didn't have estrogen in my body. So to anyone out there who doesn't have their own natural menstrual cycle and they know that their relationship with food or exercise and or hypothalamic amenorrhea is probably the predominant cause of why you don't have healthy estrogen levels, why you don't have a normal, natural, regular menstrual cycle, the number one thing that is within your control is to regain that cycle, because having estrogen in your body is probably the foundation, not probably, is definitely the foundation of rebuilding your bone mass and everything else that I'm going to be saying today. If for some reason you're like, I'm just not in a headspace or I'm not far enough along in my journey that I think I'm going to be able to fully naturally recover my cycles, definitely make sure that you have an endocrinologist as part of your team. They can talk to you about things like hormone replacement therapy, which can be really, really supportive while you work on your recovery to replace some of that lost estrogen that you don't have floating around in your body that is bioidentical and not the same as something like the contraceptive pill. If you want more information on that, I've done a whole podcast episode with Dr. Izzy Smith, who is an endocrinology doctor, and we talk through all of the things related to hormone replacement therapy. So definitely go scroll back through the catalog and check that episode out. But number one, as the basis, you have to have healthy estrogen levels and a natural, regular menstrual cycle. Once that is in place, the second thing that I did and continue to do is work on progressive overload. So, what is progressive overload? It is strength training. And this isn't things like doing gentle Pilates on the reformer with springs. This is lifting heavy weights close to failure. And also keeping in mind that these movements need to be compound movements that really challenge the areas of your body that are most impacted by low bone mineral density. So your hip and your spine are the predominant areas where you're losing a lot of bone mass quite quickly, which means that when you're working on progressive overload, you need specific movements that are going to target both of those areas that are going to put stress on them so that they in turn are kind of pushed to form more bone in those areas and, become stronger. Bone formation and bone resorption is a process that is constantly happening in our bodies. And when we give our body a healthy level of stress, then it basically goes into kind of a recovery mode where it goes, oh, well, we need to be able to tolerate that next time. So we're going to make our bones stronger. So progressive overload is incredibly important. Work with someone like myself who's an exercise physiologist, because it really is about giving you a balanced program that is going to push you hard enough. But what I'm going to talk about later in this podcast is also giving yourself enough recovery so that your body has the ability to actually make those positive repairs so that next time you go into your training session, you're actually continually improving and building and not going into a stage of potentially overtraining, which again is not going to lead to positive impacts. It's only going to kind of like either kind of keep your bone mineral density where it is and your muscle strength where it is, or it's going to go backwards. So you need progressive overload paired with proper recovery. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, if we think about what else bones need, so basically the process of progressive overload works by your muscles pulling on your tendons pulling on your bones, and basically this whole chain reaction of your body going into a process where it goes, we need to make our muscles stronger, we need to make our tendons stronger, we need to make our bones stronger. But in order to do that, it also needs the building blocks of being able to make all of those things healthy and strong again. That's where the nutrition side comes in. So I was really adamant about making sure that I got sufficient amounts of calcium every single day, mostly through food. So things like dairy products, yogurt, cheese, milk. You can have other non-dairy sources like tofu that's set in calcium, almonds, like all different kinds of things that are good sources of calcium. They even have like tuna now that has like tuna bone powder, which has, heaps of calcium in it. There are lots of different ways to get it, but I was adamant about getting enough calcium each day, mostly from good sources like, full fat dairy and those kind of things. It also gave me a source of protein and healthy fats, which are also really, really good because at the same time, you kind of still need to focus on good energy availability. If you want your body to go through this process of getting stronger and building muscle and building bone, you need to have optimal energy availability, which means having not only good energy amounts, but what we know now is it's not just the energy availability that's required, it's also carbohydrate availability that's really, really important for bone health. And that is another thing that I touched on with Dr. Izzy Smith in our episode, is that concept of carbohydrate availability being really important. And I think this is the one that people skimp on the most. So yeah, I for one definitely made friends with carbohydrates, made friends with lots of good dairy products, good calcium sources, which, I thought I was always intolerant to, but actually it just turns out, when I had an eating disorder, my digestion was just terrible. So reintroducing those foods was really helpful for me. The other thing that you need is sufficient amounts of protein. Protein's really, really important when we think about building muscle, and muscle being the thing that kind of pulls on our tendons that then pulls on our bones. We need good protein amounts coming from good quality sources. So sources of animal protein, sources of plant protein, but actually getting the right amounts for you that is going to match up with your energy levels and your energy requirements. So I definitely worked with a sports dietitian for a number of years who helped make sure that I was getting everything that I needed, not just pre-workout and post-workout, but throughout the day as well, and really challenged me to kind of make sure that I was getting a good variety of different kinds of protein as well. I think we all get stuck in a rut of kind of going towards the same things over and over again. So I found it really, really helpful to work with someone who was qualified to give me ideas on, this is going to help you reach your calcium requirements, your carb requirements. This is what's going to get you a good variety of different kinds of protein as well. And sometimes you're just at a loss of, what else to do or what to eat or what to have for a snack to make sure that you're getting in the right kind of nutrition. So definitely get help and support if you're looking to kind of improve your nutrition and improve your bone mineral density as a result. Just the same way that you would see someone like me as an exercise physiologist for a proper training plan. Now, the one I touched on before, which I wanted to touch on now in more detail, is enough rest. So you need to train hard, but you need to recover harder. And resting while you're training is also really, really important. So when we're working towards progressive overload, you might be kind of hitting, 90, close to 100% of, your capacity. But in order to do that for a few sets, you're going to need to make sure that you take plenty of rest between your sets. If you're doing circuit training, if you're doing kind of HIIT style workouts with weights, you're probably not actually doing progressive overload training. It is boring, but it is helpful to really have those longer rest periods between your sets so that you can lift at the next set to your full capacity, because that is what your muscles, your tendons, your bones actually really need to get that stimulus, to build, to remake bone. And, that is what you're looking for in terms of the outcome of reversing low bone mineral density. So enough rest. That means you might have fewer workouts in your week. Your workouts might take, the same amount of time that you usually do them, but there might be less exercises in between. And I think for me, mentally, that took a really long time to get used to. But when I started to see, every 2 years, my bone mineral density was improving and improving and improving, I was like, oh, now I know I am actually doing the right thing. And also, I had so much more energy. I was constantly lifting heavier and improving my performance. So, training more isn't always actually the best. Training smarter is actually the way to go, especially if you're working on improving or wanting to improve your strength, your muscle mass, your bone mineral density. Now, I've got 3 more to focus on. The first one is energy availability, which I kind of touched on before. So, if you're expecting your body to be in a process of building things back up, it's going to need the energy and the nutrition to do that. Does that mean that you have to have the perfect diet? No. But it does mean that you do have to eat enough and enough of the right things. And again, that's going to vary person to person depending on what stage of recovery you're at. And is really important to get outside support from, because it's so easy to fall back into old patterns and think that you're doing enough, but having someone that can objectively say like, oh, you need to change this or you need to do this more is so important, and something that I found to be incredibly beneficial. And I know my clients feel the same when I do that for them. Another one to think about is your vitamin D levels. So vitamin D is obviously a cofactor in the process of maintaining strong, healthy bones. So that means getting sunlight, but making sure that you're not getting too much sunlight and increasing your risk of things like skin cancer. But, doing it at the times of the day where the UV level is a little bit lower and you only need a certain amount of minutes to get your vitamin D. If you are in a country that doesn't have a lot of natural sunlight, then potentially taking a vitamin D supplement is going to be really, really helpful for you. Obviously, supplementation is something you should talk about with your doctor or your dietitian after getting a blood test to identify whether your levels are below the optimal level for what you need to maintain strong, healthy bones. Just don't go supplement willy-nilly if you don't need to. And if you can get it naturally from the sunlight in a safe and healthy way, definitely do that. Vitamin D is important for lots of different things, but definitely for strong bones. And the last thing that was really essential for me, reversing my low bone mineral density and now having normal bone mineral density, is patience. If I think about, from the time that I recovered my period at 27 to only having normal bone mineral density at 34, that's a long time. That's like many, many years of me kind of like putting in the work, staying consistent with it, getting those scans every 2 years, and slowly but surely seeing that improvement. You do have to have patience. And if you are seeing a general trend of improvement, you're doing the right thing. It's probably not going to change and fully reverse in 2 years. And everyone's body is going to be different. If you have osteoporosis, even any small improvement is a huge improvement in reducing things like your stress fractures, improving your function, and things like that. So do not get disheartened if you don't see this jump in improvement from one scan to the next scan. Your hormones are slow moving creatures. It takes a long time for your body to kind of replace all of these deposits and rebuild your bone after years of probably, under nutrition and over exercising. But it is possible. I am living proof. And obviously now I have to still maintain all of those things that I was talking to you about today. But it is a sign of hope that you can get to a place of, hopefully, normal bone mineral density. So if you have any questions or comments and you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I will definitely get back to you about them. I can't answer any personal questions, but I'll do my best on any general ones. If you really enjoyed listening to this podcast and you are listening on Apple or on Spotify, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps support the show. If you're looking for a really good personalized plan to help you improve your bone mineral density from either a training perspective, so an exercise program, or just good advice on what you need to do to recover your period in the first place, definitely reach out. Our Healing HA group coaching program is really, really helpful in setting you up for success for recovering your periods naturally in a short frame of time. And our Better Balance training program is amazing for anyone looking to get back into strength training and progressive overload to improve their bone mineral density, strength, performance, all of the above. So I'll leave all those links in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. And I will be back next week with a fresh new episode you can wrap your ears around.